Hey, Mike. What? Who's got next?
What's good, y'all? It's your man, Hezo. Welcome back to the Blacktop, where I always got next, you feel me? Well, Hawks fans, not the way we wanted to end our season, right? Losing in 6 games to the Celtics at home. But y'all, I'll be honest with you, we battled. And I couldn't be more proud of our guys. We were right on the cusp of pushing this team to a Game 7. We took this juggernaut Celtics team head on and really, I wouldn't say defied the odds and anything like that. I'm not going to go that far. But a lot of people picked us to losing 4. A lot of people picked us to losing 5, including myself. We almost took it to a Game 7. And I'm not the one to be for moral victories, but there's a lot of positives that I took out of this series. And I'm not, I'm not here gloating about losing in 6 games. Y'all don't take it that way. But I'm proud of the way that these guys fought against this Celtics team and battled the entire series. Now, this isn't a Game 6 recap. That's not why we're here. We're here to do an off-season outlook and the direction of this team going forward. Subscribe if you are new, drop a like on the video, and let's get right into it. Now, real quick, I just want to point out, I know a lot of you guys out there are probably wondering, Hezo, are you still going to do content now that the Hawks are eliminated from the playoffs? Duh. Some of you guys were wondering the same thing last year. The answer has not changed. Y'all keep in mind, I am not a Hawks channel. I am an NBA content channel. I do a ton of Hawks content. I do a ton of Hawks game recaps and all that. But I am still an NBA channel at the end of the day for just general NBA content. Now, do I favor the Hawks for a lot of my content? Of course, because I'm a diehard Hawks fan. But I got a lot of content planned that's up my sleeve that I've been planning for a while that I just have not recorded yet, that I plan on dropping probably, this offseason within the next couple weeks throughout the playoffs. I'm going to be doing playoff, content, all things like that. My What If series is still going. It's on pause right now. Again, if I mentioned that in the past video. I'm going to be bringing that back here shortly. But your boy ain't going nowhere, man. We here to stay. I mentioned it last year. I'm an NBA channel. Y'all keep that in mind. I just want to point that out. Now, credit to the Celtics for closing us out, moving on to the next round. They're probably a championship contending favorite, but we ain't here to talk about that, man. Again, we ain't talking about the Celtics. We're here to talk about what our direction is this offseason. Now, I was watching Bobby Marks kind of not really recap, but he did a video and was talking about the Hawks and the direction of our team going forward, and he made a lot of great points. If y'all haven't had a chance, I would definitely go recommend checking out that video. But I'll be honest, this team, we got a lot to figure out. This offseason is going to be very crucial going forward in what we decide to do, starting with the coaching staff under Quinn Snyder. I'm assuming a lot of those guys probably are not going to be on the coaching staff next season, but that was one of the reasons why I liked the higher mid-season, was so that Quinn could evaluate our guys, evaluate the coaching staff, see who he wants to keep around, see who he wants to bring back. When I look at this roster, it's very hard to break down the worth of a lot of these guys. It's going to be hard to move some of these guys that with the contracts that they're on. I know there's been a lot of speculation on Trey getting traded. I do not see that happening. Y'all know I've talked about it in streams. I've talked about what we should do, blah, blah, blah. I'm not going to get into all that all over again. I do not think Trey is going anywhere. I am very, very concerned about the re-signing of DeJounte. And again, this is why you need to go check out Bobby Marks' video, because he pointed out that DeJounte can only sign an extension for 4 years up to $114 million, which is nowhere near an actual max contract, which would only put him at about $25 million a year. That's right around what John Collins makes. I do not see DeJounte taking that contract with this Hawks team. And if you're in the Hawks front office, you have to ask the question, do you bring a guy like DeJounte back who really struggled to mesh with Trey on the court? We were not great. We were a 500 basketball team legitimately the entire season. We finished 41-41 on the season. We obviously won the first play-in game to get us to a 7 seed. That's great and everything. But a 500 team with the way this roster is constructed is just unacceptable. Now, a lot of that you can point at Nate McMillan, but a lot of it is on the players as well. A lot of it is on Trey with his performance. A lot of it is on DeJounte, and the other guys on this roster. JC had a very, very down year. The problem with the money of this team going forward is that we have an owner who does not want to go into the luxury tax. We have guys coming up that are due for extensions in Double O, Sadiq Bey. These guys, and then if we re-sign DeJounte, these guys are all going to demand not small contracts by any means. I mean, Double O and Sadiq Bey are probably going to be in the $15 to $20 million range. DeJounte is probably going to want to be in the 30-plus category, which we can't even re-sign him to until he actually hits the free agent market, which do you let it get to that point and then potentially risk losing out on him going forward? There are so many question marks this offseason when it comes to the player re-signing and when it comes to who is potentially on the move and on the trade block. Again, I don't see Trey going anywhere, at least not this season. Now, maybe next season after a full season under Quinn Snyder, if it still has not worked out, if Trey has not improved and gotten back to where, he's capable, which I think he will after watching the playoffs. I think he will bounce back, and I think next year will really be his revenge tour, and he's going to have a great bounce back season next year. But he's not really my question mark. My question mark is the other guys on the team with, again, the likes of DeJounte, the likes of JC. And if I am in the front office, if I am Landry Fields, there's two candidates that I am looking to move on from. And number one, it's not JC, it's Clint Capela. This dude was awful in the playoffs, man. I'm sorry. But Clint Capela did not have a great season. He's not a great finisher around the basket. He took a step back defensively. Yes, he's still a great rebounder. But Clint Capela averaged 8 points and 8 boards in the playoffs against Boston. 8 boards. For a guy who has led the league in rebounding, a guy that typically averages around 13 boards a game, he averaged 8 rebounds. That's unacceptable for your starting center. Clint Capela is just, he is not the guy that he used to be. Again, he has regressed. He looked out of shape for most of the season. He has yet to actually improve his game. I mentioned it before. He's not an offensive player. He's really an average, maybe above average shot blocker at this point. We've seen games where he's gotten 6, 7 blocks before. We've seen all that. But he averaged under 2 blocks on the season. He didn't even average a block for the playoff run that we just went through in the 6 games against Boston. There was a lot of times throughout this Boston series where Clint Capela looked unplayable. He did not have a great series, and I think it's time to move on from him and get a guy maybe either on a cheaper contract or just get a younger, more athletic guy, maybe that can stretch the floor a little bit so that we can add a little bit more versatility to this offense that can still hold down the paint defense. When you have a guy like Clint Capela on a team and you're ranked bottom 10 in defense for the regular season, something's got to change. Now, we know that the defensive lapse and everything of Trey. We get all that. But we were a horrible defensive team all season long. We were in the bottom half of paint defense. We were one of the worst teams in the league at giving up layups and dunks. Those are two things that Bobby Marks pointed out in his video. That's unacceptable with a guy like Clint Capela. So if I am Landry Fields and I am Quinn Snyder, I didn't really like what I saw from Clint Capela. I'm looking to move on from him. Now you're probably thinking, Hezo, what is he worth? I don't know. I don't know who's on the trade block. I don't know who's available at the center position. But you have to at least pick up the phone and make calls and make Clint Capela available. Now the second piece I think that needs to be on the move, unfortunately, and I hate to say it, and it's my guy JC. I love JC. I've stressed that in so many different videos. John Collins is one of my favorite players. But I think his time on this team has come to an end. I think JC deserves a fresh start. I think that's a lot of the reasons why we have seen him struggle. Now, he played really well in game 5 and 6 and was a huge impact in those games. But games 1 for 4, he was unbearably bad. It was, I mentioned in one of my recaps, it was to the point where he almost couldn't even be on the floor because of how bad he was on offense and defense. And rebounding the basketball. He averaged 4 rebounds in that playoff series against Boston. That is unacceptable as your 4. So you got 8 rebounds from your center and 4 rebounds from your power forward. 12 rebounds total from your front court. That's unacceptable. With the contract that JC is under, with the money that he is making, you have to look for a cheaper alternative again, because you're going to be in the luxury tax. We have a cheap owner who will not pay the luxury tax. And when you have those other guys on the roster that are due for a contract extension, that are going to want their money, it's not going to make sense to pay all these guys when you're essentially a 500 team. Now, granted, do I think that we're going to be better under Quinn Snyder? Yes, I do. But are we going to be a contender with the current way that this roster is constructed? Absolutely not. Even with Quinn Snyder in a full season, absolutely not. Now, one crucial piece I think that we have this year that's going to be big going into the offseason is 2 things. The Sacramento pick that we got back in the Kevin Huerter trade, and also our draft pick this year. Now, y'all keep in mind, I know you're probably thinking, oh, let's go out and let's package 3 or 4 first-round picks and get another guy. It's not, you can't do it. We have 3 tradable first-round picks. 3. And that's over the next 10, almost 10 years. 3 tradable first-round picks because we gave up 3 first-round picks in the DeJounte deal. Because of the stipend, is it stipend? Is that how you pronounce it? Because of the stipend rule, you cannot trade picks in back-to-back years. And I don't think some of y'all get that. The only tradable picks that we have is our pick this year. Once we hit on once draft night starts, that pick becomes tradable. The Sacramento pick that we got in the Kevin Huerter deal and our 2029 first-round pick. Those are our only tradable picks until 2029. So what does a trade look like? It's hard to draw up a trade because we don't know who's available. That's the biggest thing. We don't know what Clint Capela and John Collins' value is. Do you package them? Do you slap a first-round pick on it? Do you slap this year's first-round pick? Because at what value are we getting it with this first-round pick with a guy in the draft? Because we saw a guy like AJ Griffin who got some minutes throughout the season, but really fell out of the rotation once Quinn Snyder got there because we got Saddiq Bey in the trade. So it doesn't really make sense to draft another guy, at 16, 17, 18, whatever our pick is, and have him sit on the bench again when we can use this draft pick to potentially package to maybe upgrade our roster. Now, with that being said, I know there's a lot of speculation, and this is the biggest name that I am going to look out for, and I am absolutely praying that it is even the slightest chance possibility, and that is Jalen Brown. And I say Jalen Brown because everybody knows that he was in the Kevin Durant trade rumor when Boston was talking about maybe moving on from Jalen Brown and packaging him with Kevin Durant. Now, if you don't know, that rubbed Jalen Brown the wrong way, and you can tell by his demeanor in a lot of interviews that he did not want to be in Boston. Now, I think it's going to come down to how deep the Celtics go in the playoffs. Do they win the championship? But either way, I don't think Jalen Brown is guaranteed to re-sign with Boston. We've seen guys go and win a championship. Even if Boston wins the championship this year, we have seen guys go and win a championship and move on somewhere else. We know he's from Atlanta. We saw kind of a whispering conversation between him and Trey at the end of Game 6. Now, I'm not going to speculate on all that, but when you have a guy who's from Atlanta, he has mentioned that he grew up a Hawks fan, I think it is I'm not going to say a strong possibility, but it's not out of the realm of being unrealistic. It's not out of the realm that it can't happen. When you have a guy like DeJounte, who maybe would re-sign with Boston. Maybe we'll say, I want to go to Boston. Listen, man, this is all speculation. This is all my opinion at the end of the day. I'm not saying that that's going to happen, but if maybe you can fabricate a trade and package DeJounte with John Collins, maybe AJ Griffin, maybe Jalen Johnson, and attach maybe our pick this year and that Sacramento pick for a Jalen Brown, does that type of trade package, kind of raise the eyebrows of a Boston if they know they're on the verge of losing him after next season in free agency, when we know that he's going to be due for a contract extension and maybe he doesn't want to re-sign in Boston? Only time will tell on that. I don't think Jalen Brown gets moved this offseason. I think if he does get moved, it'll be at the deadline. And same thing with DeJounte. I think it's going to come down to, will these guys want to re-sign with their respective teams? And if not, I think maybe you look for them to be swapped because of the simple fact that they may agree to, DeJounte maybe agrees to re-sign with Boston. Maybe, Jalen Brown agrees to re-sign with Atlanta. And at that point, maybe you get a cheaper package if Jalen Brown comes out and says, I want to play for the Hawks. I don't think that's completely unrealistic. Maybe it doesn't happen, but I don't think it's completely unrealistic. And I think it is something to keep an eye on this offseason and going into the trade deadline next season. Now, with all that being said, there is no untouchable player on this team. Before Trey was untouchable, he was untouchable. Trey is no longer untouchable. So for somehow, some way, Atlanta receives an enticing package that they can't say no to, maybe Trey does get moved. I don't personally see that happening this offseason. I know a lot of you guys want to move on from DeAndre Hunter. I think that's silly because DeAndre Hunter really had an incredible, I wouldn't say incredible, but he had a great playoff series against Boston. He shot the ball relatively well for the most part as a whole. He played excellent defense on Jason Tatum, and I think he is in my eyes, a building block for Quinn Snyder going forward. And I think Quinn Snyder likes Dre, and I think he wants to keep him on his team. I think Quinn Snyder also likes Trey and wants to keep Trey on his team and build with him. But again, nobody's untouchable. So if the right package comes along, I think the discussion has to be there. But I think really the only two guys, if I'm Atlanta, I'm adding to the actual trade block, it's JC and Capela. The biggest issue, and I mentioned this earlier, the biggest issue for Atlanta going forward is going to be money. Because I mentioned it before. We have an owner who does not want to go into the luxury tax, who does not want to go high and pay that. If you're not willing to pay the luxury tax, I'm gonna be honest, you're gonna have a hard time winning the championship. Not to say that it can't be done, but when you're unwilling to pay players, they're just going to walk, and you're going to lose out on high quality players because you don't want to pay them and you don't want to go into the luxury tax. So that is something to keep your eye on going forward. As long as Tony Ressler is the owner of this team, I don't know how much wiggle room we are going to have with the money that we have tied up in our players, and with re-signing players going forward. I have a very, very hard time believing that we are going to give DeJounte a max contract with Trey already having a max contract. Paying two small guards as your franchise cornerstones is something that I personally cannot wrap my head around. Now, would I pay Jalen Brown? Absolutely, 1,000%, because he's a 6'6", 6'7" guy who has consistently shown up in the playoffs. We just saw what he did to us in Game 6. We saw what he did to us in Game 5. We saw what he did to us in that entire playoff series. DeJounte is not that type of player, and he doesn't deserve max money. So if you have to lose him, even if you have to lose him for nothing, rather than pay him a max contract, I'm sorry, but that's the direction that we have to take. Now, I truly believe that we would trade him before it would come to that. But again, it's something to keep your eye on. This money situation that the Hawks are in is not good. We got a lot of work to do this offseason, man. We really do. And it starts from the coaching staff and it goes on to the players. Who knows what's going to happen? This is all speculation. This is all coming from my opinion and what I think we should do, what to keep an eye on. But again, the money is a problem, and that is a fact. Again, if you don't believe me, or if you want more details, go and watch Bobby Marks' breakdown of the Hawks' future going forward, and you'll get kind of a better understanding of where we sit with our money and going forward in that aspect. So I'm gonna pretty much leave it there, man. Y'all let me know your thoughts down in the comments. Where do you see Atlanta going this offseason? What direction do you think we should take? Who do you think gets moved? Who do you think stays on the roster? All that type of good stuff. Drop a like on the video, and I will catch y'all next episode.